All right, today we got Sam Parr from The Hustle and HubSpot, and we're talking about books today. I know he looks like he can't read, but believe me, he can read at a third grade level. Yeah.
How many books do you read a month?
How many books do I read a month? I used to read probably maybe four books a month. Now I probably read like one book a month.
Yeah. I do. Do you count Audible as reading?
Yeah.
Then I do on a low month 1, on a normal month 3, on a lately I'm on a tear because I'm reading short things that I can read in 2 days. I'll do 8.
Yeah. I mean, books were invented way back in the day when this is what you had to do for the next 2 months. Now you get tweets and YouTube videos. However,
I could read this and this is 200 pages. You could do that in a day.
Are you going to understand all the big words? Are you? Yeah.
You could do that in 2 hours. 2 hour bedtime, 2 bedtimes.
Yeah. Well, these kinds of books. Do you read before bed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I won't read a business book before bed though. I'll
get
read
your brain all fired.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to read something else. Okay. So we got different recommendations. So we got recommendations from life, business, investing, just fun reads, fiction, and then writing. So let's start off with books about life. What's your recommendations here?
All right. I don't have the book. We're at your house, so you got the book. So you're gonna have to put up a.
We'll do a thing. Yeah,
a thing. So I read a ton of books on life. These are just some of the few that are recent. But I'm gonna go with here. You have it here. The number one book that changed my life.
Yeah.
Oh, you have a couple of them. Where is it?
This one?
Yeah.
This is the one I recommended it to you. Yeah.
Yes. Neville, you recommended this to me about 5 years ago. It's called How to Get Rich. That camera. Is that the camera? How to Get Rich. I hate recommending this to people because the title is so bad. But basically the background is, it's this guy named Felix Dennis. He's basically like Richard Branson meets Mick Jagger, meaning he's this very successful British entrepreneur, but he's way more vulgar than Branson. And he has admitted that he used to smoke crack and do coke and sleep with women, and he was in the rock and roll industry. Anyway, the average person watching will best know him as the owner of Maxim magazine, but he owned 18 or 30 different magazines that made him worth $800 million when he died. And he wrote this book right before he died, and he explained some of his business philosophies. And that's good, but the best part is that he's a very good writer, and he's to the point, right?
He's like a poet.
He's a poet. It's beautiful.
I love this book. Here's the thing. I think most people write books because they want to make some money or make a name for themselves.
And he was rich already.
He was already rich. He already made a name for himself. All the money went to charity. He wrote it, and he didn't give a fuck. That's what I like the best. He just didn't care, and so he's very vulgar. He starts off the book saying he spent 100 million pounds on drugs. Yeah,
and he also the advice that he gives is different than a lot of popular advice.
Very different.
And this book does it say when it came out? It came out in the early 2000s. I think he died a few years later.
Yeah.
So he really was he's old man, rich guy. I don't care.
I don't think this book could be written again today.
No, and that's why I like it.
The way he wrote it, I don't know that you could do it again.
Yeah, and I wish someone would. I wish there was an updated version, but it's pretty amazing. His business still exists, so that's cool. So that's my first one. Do you want to go?
Yeah. Well, so I got a couple of different ones. My number one for life is a book called This Is Earl Nightingale. I've talked about this for a long time. This is the guy who started off the self-help industry by accident. So he had a small little radio show that he did. They turned it into a book, and it became a bestseller, all that kind of stuff. It's discontinued from print in 1969.
There's a problem with that book.
What?
If you want to buy it, how much do you have to spend?
So every time I talk about it, the price goes up to about $400. Because there's not that many prints. So I actually bought a couple up. I'm going to do a giveaway soon. I bought it before I actually released this episode because of that. So you could find this probably on the internet somewhere for free, maybe. I don't know. But also I bought it for $20, and then it goes up to $400 when people do it. But here's the thing. This is like my Bible. And here's the reason I tell people this. I can open it up to any different chapter. And so this one's called The Road to Peace of Mind, a Conscious of Competence. And you can read any different chapter and get a little daily pick-me-up. There is no fluff in this book at all. Zero.
Yeah, and he's amazing.
It's amazing. I love all his stuff. And if you want, you could look up on YouTube, The Strangest Secret. Not that bullshit book, The Secret. The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale. Look it up. My number one recommendation for life. Anything you got?
That one, that Neville one. I liked that. So I'm going to combine this with two. So this is very similar. I just read this book called Courage to be Disliked. Have you ever heard of that?
I don't know. You're already disliked and you don't have courage. So there you go. Yeah. Figured it out. Yeah.
And basically that paired with this, there's this book, the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. It's two parts. The first part is about money. The second part is about happiness. I didn't care about the money part. I cared about the happiness part. And basically I'm going to summarize that as well as the other book, basically in one sentence. All right. Life is just a time when you get colors and noises into your brain, and it's up to you to decide how you're going to react to that. And it just expounds on that. And I'm like, oh, so like, why am I assigning anger to this light or sound? Like, I don't have to do that. You think like, well, I lost my temper. It's like, well, you don't actually have to lose your temper. You don't have to be angry at that if you don't want to be. You could choose how you react to certain things. And that was actually important to me. So I like that book.
Well, can I expound on this one? So Naval Ravikant, really smart investor guy, like tech, all that kind of stuff. I think one of the things he talks about that's really caught on is leverage. And so back in the day, you had a shovel and you just shoveled one thing and that's how much you can make. Now you can write code that can run trillions of times inside of a server room. And so you can leverage your good ideas. So he wants to spend a whole year trying to figure out one good direction to aim and then have that executed by either code or other people. And that's kind of a really cool thing that he's come up with. That's a big thing he's known for nowadays. Cool. Any other life books?
Well, okay, so kinda. I'm gonna make an audible here. So I'm gonna tell you 4 books that I've read recently. I enjoy books on suffering.
Okay.
Let me explain. I've been thinking a lot about this as like men who are mostly even we are affluent, but even if we're just like mildly affluent, like, we have a yuppie job, we sit in a cubicle or a nice office, we don't have to go and hunt for our food, we're not going to get drafted for war, we have really cushy lives. And because of that, I think that the depression rates and anxiety is really high, whereas maybe if you have like a mission like right after September 11th, or maybe World War II, or the Neanderthal, like in the hunter and gatherer phase, like when you have a mission that you actually have to go out in order to survive, I think you have less suffering. So what I like to do is I like to read about people who just have a shit life, and I'm like, all right, things are okay. Yeah, I've got it really good. I shouldn't complain. And so I'm going to tell you a few books that I've read that do that. So the first is called Endurance. Have you heard of that?
No.
It is amazing. It's one of the few things I've ever read in one sitting. So basically between 1900 and 1920, they call it the heroic Arctic expedition era. And so these guys, they didn't have radios, but they did have motors. And so they were able to go from England all the way down to Antarctica, which is at the South Pole. And they kind of had it mapped out, but not really. And so these guys were fucking ballsy and crazy. And I cannot believe they did this. And one of them did it with 30 men, and he gets in his ship and they get stuck. The ice traps them. They get trapped there for 24 months. And eventually they like take the rowboat and they start walking 400 miles over Antarctica, then get the rowboat and start rowing towards Africa. And it's about their whole journey. And they all survived. And that was amazing because it taught me 2 things. One, like, it could be so much worse. But even when it's really bad, you can find happiness. They were like on the verge of death. They were hungry. And they were like, but we're happy. The second thing that I learned was the reason they were happy was because the leader, he was confident. He goes, we're going to get out of this. This is going to be fine. He didn't show weakness to them, even though he was afraid. And so the feelings of the group take the leader. So that was my 2 learnings. That book's amazing. I'll keep going really quickly.
Keep going.
The second one is Man's Search for Meaning. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
So the story is that there's this, I guess you see a psychiatrist or a philosopher. I don't know what this exact terminology, a PhD student who studied, is it philosophy? I don't know what
I'm forgetting the author's name, but go ahead.
Yeah, I forget what he was, but he was a PhD student, and he had a theory on suffering and why it's important and why it's good and how to solve it. Well, turns out he happens to be the subject of the world's greatest case study. He's a Jew in 1939, and they throw him into a concentration camp. And he's like, well, I had this theory on suffering. I am now in the worst possible situation that you could ever imagine. Let's put my theory to the test. And he did. And it's called Man's Search. Viktor Frankl is his name. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. And he talks about what he notices in the concentration camp and his theory on logotherapy, which basically is defined as so long as your why is strong enough, you can go through anyhow. So you can suffer anything so long as you have a reason why you're going to do it. And so that's a great book. The third one is Empire of the Summer Moon. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes.
What do you know about it?
I've never read it though.
Okay, so basically, do you know how, like, if I'm talking about like the battles between Comanche Indian or between Indians and white Americans, in your head you imagine like a nice Indian and a white guy like kicking it off its land,
Yeah.
right? Maybe that was true in some cases. The Comanches and the Texans were wonderful. They had a wonderful battle. They were, for a while, until they invented a revolver, they were very equal, and they were fucking brutal to each other. They were horrible to each other, and it's very fascinating about this war that the Comanches had, and it's all about the Comanches and about their traditions, and it's very fascinating. They're a very interesting group of people, and I found it to be amazing. It's called Empire of the Summer Moon. And then finally, How to Think Like a Roman Emperor. It's about stoicism, and the whole concept is on negative visualization. So a lot of times successful people or people who are aspirational, they think to themselves, in 20 years, I'm going to have this Ferrari. I'm going to have this boat. I'm going to feel good, yada, yada, yada. I think you should do the opposite. You should say, my wife has cancer. I'm going to die next week in a car crash. My dog just died today. And you sit there and you really believe that that's true. Like, this is my wife's last day. And then you wake up and you go, oh, that's not true. I am so grateful.
It's like waking up from a bad dream and it didn't happen.
Yes. And you're like, I feel great. I feel awesome. And that is negative visualization. And so I like that. So those are my life books that I've read recently that I enjoy.
Interesting. All right. So you like to see that, like, things are good compared to what they were. I like that. I think a lot of immigrants naturally kind of know that because they see the other side and they're like, damn, this sucks. This is my everyday life. And then they come to a place like America and they're like, this is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think we constantly need to remind it because like sometimes
but people that grew up here sometimes don't inherently understand that.
And I'll sometimes flip out. I'm like, oh, like your deck. You're like, oh, the deck. Like, I wish it was just a slightly different brown. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, dude, fuck that.
Okay, I'm going to go through 3 life books real quick. So these are like in the life category. So Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, a classic. Once again, you could read this really quick. Zero fluff. I'm sure you've read this back in the day, right?
Yeah. You want to hear a funny story about this?
Do it.
So have you heard of Guthrie Ranker?
No. Oh, Guthrie Ranker. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. So Guthrie Ranker, it's 2 guys, Guthrie and then Ranker.
Yeah.
They're most famous because they own a $3 billion a year business called Guthrie Ranker. And basically what they did was they invented helped invent the infomercial. Their most famous product was Proactive. Which made billions a year and still crushes it. And they made a bunch of other things that you probably have seen. The very first product that they ever had was they bought the rights to this book.
Really?
Yes. Huh. And so Think and Grow Rich was mildly popular. Guthrie, one of the guys, read it and he goes, this is life-changing. And he bought the rights to the book and they made an infomercial for this book. And that's one of the reasons why it got so famous. That
was one of the first self-help books I read like in middle school or something like that. And it was profound. I mean, it's really profound. I read it many, 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 many times.
I think and there is a few things that you have to look out for this book. He does talk about some weird sex stuff.
Oh, sexual transmutation.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
He basically talks about, for guys, you don't jerk off as much. and
which I'm
helps.
on board with, actually.
Yeah.
But I don't remember exactly what examples I'm thinking of, but there are some things in here where you're like, that's a little...
I liked that he went there. I
agree.
Because even at the time, that was some real weird stuff for the time.
And I believe what he did was Andrew Carnegie, who was like the Jeff Bezos of our time, this guy, Napoleon, went to Andrew and said, I want to write a book about you and other people. And he goes, great, follow me and I'll finance it.
Yeah. He was kind of like the disciple.
Yeah.
And then he ended up getting really famous for it. I think he died penniless, though, is the rumor. Anyhow.
He was a weird guy. Napoleon Hill was a fucking weirdo.
Here's a weird one. I'm just going to brief on quickly the Anthony Bourdain Kitchen Confidential one. I just liked, I was trying to get more into cooking food. I cooked you dinner the other day. I was trying to get more into cooking food, and I read this, and it's like, he's so into it, and I'll never be that into it, but I love it when people are obsessed with something. Like chefs back in the day were not sexy, not considered cool, but he loved that world so much, and it just exudes that he loves something so much. And I thought that was a super
And he's got
cool.
another good one.
Yeah?
Just came out.
I haven't read that one.
It's like red. I forget what it is, but yes.
Yeah. And then I know this one's a little cheesy. The 5 Love Languages. I mean, this is one of the one. Like, here's the reason I read this book. I think almost most of the species in the Western world has read this book. Like everyone talks about the 5 love languages. They know the 5 love languages. Everyone that's been in a relationship, this is like such a great book.
You don't
Some
have
great
to read it,
analogies.
really. You could just read a summary.
You could read a summary, but like there were things in there. Like I remember thinking like a person has like a love tank that needs to be filled. And if it's not filled, then they start acting real mean.
I should probably reread it.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought this was a great book, and I always reference it, and other people do. And just a great book for life and a quick and easy read. Cool. Let's go to business books. What are some of your top biz books?
Dude, I don't read a lot of business books. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I mean, I've read most all these here because I've been reading for a long time. But like over the past 2 years, maybe 4 years, I don't know what business book I've read.
What about like investing or anything like that?
I don't read any of them. Well, a few, but really I don't. So let me tell you a few.
Yeah.
The biggest influence in my life was a book called Influence by Robert Cialdini. That was the best business book I've ever read because
Actually, have that over there somewhere.
it taught me, yeah, you definitely do. It taught me how to persuade people. The second best business book I've ever read was this one. What is this called? The Adweek Copywriting Handbook. And if you want...
It used to be called this.
Yes, so this is the original. And you can actually find this one.
It's the same book. They just rebranded it.
And if you look this title up on Amazon, it's like $100 or $200 or $300. Or you could find the PDF online for free. If you just do this one, it's literally the same thing, and it's $10.
Joe Sugarman.
Yeah, I think this is one of the best. This changed my life.
Joe Sugarman was one of the best copywriters around. And in the 70s, a lot of copywriters were extremely scammy, very direct mail. He was actually legit. He invented a bunch of products, and he's still kicking. He's still selling stuff.
Yeah, he kills it. I like him. I like that book.
Advertising Secrets of the Written Word, or the Adweek Guide to Copywriting or Writing, whatever it's called now. Other business books, investing books that you have? I got a couple over here.
You go.
I got a couple.
I read this one was pretty amazing. You read this one?
Yeah.
Built to Sell.
Built to Sell.
Yeah, I read that one. That one was pretty cool.
I liked it because it was a quick story. It wasn't a how-to book. It was just a story of how an agency owner went from just like randomly getting clients and making money here and there. And then he had this kind of like rich dad mentor, and he goes on to process of like making logos, and they become known for that. And then he's able to sell the company. It's a real quick anecdotal book. I think it's like 100 pages or so.
Yeah, I think business books are okay. I just prefer reading the biography of the people who I like, and I learn more.
Well, my friend, that's where we're getting into Mr. Warren Buffett. I think if you read anything, Warren Buffett, so not necessarily these two books alone.
So I actually have this one.
The Essays of Warren Buffett.
Yeah, and I could tell you a couple fun facts about that.
Go ahead.
So Warren Buffett is a wonderful writer.
Amazing.
He's an amazing writer. And if you Google Warren Buffett words per sentence Sam Parr, you'll find an article. I did an analysis of it where I analyzed the shareholder letters to his Berkshire Hathaway, maybe from the 60s up until
he still does them.
2015, I think, is when I did it. So it had 40, 50 years. And his average word per sentence started at like 32, and every year has gotten shorter to now the average word per sentence is 19 or 17, which is like a nice sentence size. That's perfect.
So what I wanted to tell people to buy, and sorry if I cut you off there, was actually just print out, go to BerkshireHathaway.com. It's the world's shittiest looking website, and you can find all the PDFs.
Yeah, but you can buy it on Amazon for $20.
True. Or you can just print them out and read them right there. It's amazing to read his shareholder letters. And how
they're really good. Like he'll explain like the insurance company.
He's like Richard Feynman, the famous physicist.
Yeah.
He'll explain nuclear physics to like a fifth grader. It's so easy when he explains it.
Very easy.
Similarly, Warren Buffett does that with investing. He's just like, everyone's like, tech stocks are up. He's like, they're not. Sometimes they go down. And then he has all these great little quips. He's like, you see who's swimming naked when the tide goes out. He's all that kind of stuff. And here's the thing. Some people are always like, oh, Warren Buffett missed crypto, blah, blah, blah. It's like, but this guy has been making good decisions for decades straight without fail.
I did not read his biography. He doesn't really interest me as a person much.
No.
Because I think that he's not. I think that we have to remember when reading biographies is that for virtually everyone, if you are world class at one thing, you're probably shitty in most everything else. So
he's not a great father. He's not a great husband.
Shit dad, a shit husband. Yeah. He's not good at anything else. He's rude to people. And when I read that, I'm like, well, I don't want to idolize you because that's not the type of character I want. So that's why I chose not to read it, because I do think that sometimes when I read these things, I think, oh, you're fucking awesome. You're rude. Like, you don't pay attention to your family. Like,
But don't you think you can learn from like the good side of him? Like,
yeah, I do. But yeah, like I'm okay with that. But I'm nervous that some of the bad stuff will rub off on me. You know how they say you're the average of your friends? I feel like I'm the average of the people I read about too. And so I'll be like, oh, so it's okay to be like...
Well, I just say like, so, okay, back in the day, I did one of the best things I ever did in life was I went through a day trading phase in college. Fortunately, in college, you had a business in college too. So we had a little bit of extra money and I had a little bit of extra money in my pocket. I could put a couple $1,000s in a trading account before it was like Robin Hoodized. And I started trading and every day it would go up like 1%, 2%, or go down 3%. And I would freak out. I'm like, oh my God, I lost money, blah, blah, blah. And then I started reading Warren Buffett and he's like, I don't care what the stock price is. Like, unless I'm selling it or buying it right now, what difference does it make? And he started talking about long-term fundamentals and how like in the long run, he gives a million examples that if you just wait for the long run, the Mr. Market like equals out. And so that was my biggest takeaway from Warren Buffett. And I stopped day trading because I was like, the money I held in just long-term trades, which I knew were going to do well, did so much better. The capital gains was not even there and less stressful. I didn't do anything. You make one trade, you don't touch it for years. And then at the end, it's awesome. Whereas day trading, it's like, is it up? Is it down? You know, is Twitter going to be mad about this? And then I have to guess. Right. It's like a whole bunch of stuff. I was so glad I went through a day trading phase and then got out of it because of Warren Buffett. So I would consume a lot of what he stuff. Honestly, you can watch a lot of YouTube videos about him and kind of pick up the same stuff.
The HBO thing's pretty good too.
I never saw that.
When are you going to talk about this?
Okay, so this is the fun reads. So this is just to analyze how to do writing. So there's a guy named Neil Strauss, The Game, Motley Crue. You know Neil Strauss, of course, yeah. Right? He's got like 10 bestsellers. He's got one about Marilyn Manson, Jenna Jameson, porn stars, how to escape the country, and like all sorts of crazy stuff. This guy, in my opinion, is one of the best writers of our generation. I mean,
he's amazing.
His numbers show it. He's just an amazing writer. This is a book about Motley Crue, the famous rock and roll band. And I don't think things like this can exist in the world anymore. Like with social media, like there's just not going to be people like this as much anymore. This is some of the craziest stories I've ever read. I was howling laughing. I would have to like put it down at night and be like, damn it, I want to keep reading. And it just like stay up till like 4 a.m. reading it. The book, The Game. This is a controversial book.
14 or 15 when that came out. It changed my life.
How so?
So explain what it is first.
The book, The Game, is about how to pick up chicks. And he infiltrates this group of, I guess, pickup artists back in the early day when it's like a real seedy industry. And he learns how to pick up women. And they rent a big house in Hollywood. And they just go out every night and pick up women.
For every young guy that's like not really good looking and naturally charming, they should read that. Because the agony of not being able to talk to girls, like it sucks, and that helps. So I have been with the same woman now for 8 years. We're married, and she's like a very alpha, like type A, Ivy League, smart, amazing girl. I met her because I used some of those techniques.
Yeah. And like some of them are like seedy, but it's one of those things where it's like you could pick the good and
you could pick the good.
Bad.
Like when I met Sarah, I immediately like caught her attention by telling a joke, and then I made sure that I didn't come off needy. Like these are all like things that like any grown man who has like had a relationship, they understand. But when you're 16 and you don't have a big brother, be like, no, dude, you can't come off needy. You got to stick out.
Do you notice that a lot of women have read this book too?
Well, it's fun to read.
It's a great, he's Neil Strauss, whatever he writes, just amazing. But like this was one of his first, I think, breakout books. Amazing read if you just want to study writing, and it's awesome.
All right, so let me name a few. Okay, one that I'm reading now that I'm halfway done. The Rise of Teddy Roosevelt. Do you know anything about Teddy Roosevelt?
I love Teddy Roosevelt.
Okay, so let me give. I'm halfway through, so I can't tell you everything about him. But he was born in a wealthy family. His dad died, and he was given like $1 million, the equivalent of $1 million. So rich, but like I don't think he was like billionaire rich. But he liked to box, so he would box every day. Mm-hmm. He went to the Dakotas, which at the time was considered like, I don't even think that was part of America. And he would go hunt and like live out in the wilderness. And he eventually had this book that he wrote. He was prolific. So he did all this active stuff, mm-hmm. But then also he wrote a book on zoology when he was in his teens that was considered to be very, very, very good. So he would find dead birds and kill birds and dissect them and explain, well, like, I don't know how it works, but explain like, you know, where he thinks they came from and what they look like. And then he eventually wrote a book on the Spanish-American War when he was 22. And this book, to this day, is part of the curriculum because at the time, it was regarded as an expert, like it was an expert book. And he was like a fighting man. He was an outdoorsman. He wrote books like crazy. They say that he holds the world record for shaking the most amount of hands in one day, 9,000. So very well-rounded man, incredibly interesting, very positive. His wife gave birth to the daughter, and the wife and his own mother, who lived in the same home, died on the same day.
Oh.
And so he had a tragedy. He's a very interesting person. And then finally, my last biography to recommend is the biography of John Rockefeller. He's the most perfect human being I have ever read about.
John Rockefeller?
Yeah.
Is he like known for like being horrible? And like the whole deal is that he paid a bunch of money to kind of like he did reputation.com of like 1930s.
I said he was the most perfect. So here's the deal. John Rockefeller, he was Baptist. And so he believed that it wasn't right to lie. And he goes, well, I guess I don't know much about baptism, but Baptist, but for some reason, it's like if you're good at something, you got to go all in on it. And he was like, at a young age, he goes, I'm great at making money, so it's my duty to God to make a lot of money and then give it away. And so he started, when he was 22, he was like, I think this oil thing's going to be huge. And so he goes, and in order for it to be big, I have to own the whole industry because then I can keep it really cheap. I can make sure that the product is really high quality. And that's why he called it Standard Oil. He goes, we're going to buy everyone out. I'm going to borrow as much money as I can. We're going to buy everyone out. And it's going to be the Standard Oil. And we're going to make it really cheap so everyone can have it. And so everyone really basically says monopolies are bad. In his mind, he was a dictator, but a benevolent dictator. He was like, but we're going to treat people right, but we are going to be a monopoly. And he actually did that. So at one point, he owned 80% of the American oil supply. The product was good and it was very cheap. But then Teddy Roosevelt broke it up and he goes, you can't be a monopoly anymore. And during that point, that trial, that's the first time and only time I believe Rockefeller ever lied. So he lied about not knowing about some pact a bunch of his companies had with one another. And so he did lie about that. But he was a ruthless businessman, but he was very ethical, but he was ruthless. And when his companies broke up, a few of that exist nowadays are Exxon, BP, Conoco,
Saudi Arabia, Aramco, largest oil company on the planet.
Then that came from Standard Oil.
Yeah,
those are
1920s,
all.
that was Standard
so that's
Oil.
just how big this thing is. And so he's very big, but he never cheated on his wife. He was a wonderful father. He put a lot of pressure on his kids.
I read the other side of Rockefeller. I must have read a different book also.
John Rockefeller never cheated on his wife.
I thought he was like a big philanderer towards the end.
His wife was dead.
Okay.
His wife was dead. His wife died. And I don't know if he was having sex, but I think like he would like pinch. He was like a creepy grandpa.
Yeah.
Like he would pinch girls' butt. So I think he was creepy. I would say that's still almost on the correct side of ethical, but yeah, you could say, yeah, that's wrong, but like that's the worst.
John Rockefeller recommends The Game. Yeah.
So those are my books.
Cool. I got a couple biographies I love. So man, there's so many because I love a lot. I read a biography of like Jackie Chan, Jay Leno, all these people. I love biographies, autobiographies. Sam Walton was one of the first I read. I read this one a couple times.
It's amazing.
I love Sam Walton, owner of Walmart. So Walmart was definitely like the Amazon of its time. It's still a behemoth today. And it's kind of interesting because there's a lot of things about Walmart that people didn't know. Standardizing things. If you wanted to go buy meat, a sponge, and also a vacuum in one day, you just couldn't do it. You had to go to different places. People couldn't travel as well back in the day. You one stop at Walmart, you get everything you need. It was a huge boon to families.
At a lot of those stores, you'd have to wait for someone to come and help you grab all the crap for you.
Yeah. Over here, you just walk around with a cart and get it all for you. The other thing he did, what people don't know, the largest private plane fleet in the world is still owned by Walmart. So they have stores in weird bumfuck places, and it's very difficult to get like a flight from there. So many of their top people ride in very small private jets or prop planes, and they go around the country, and they pioneered that. So he used to fly around in a plane and look at land. So early Google Maps and be like, whoa, there's two highways that intersect right there. And there's like a big farm. Let's just buy
And he was pretty ruthless. He would go in his competitor stores and just copy everything that they did that he thought was good.
So it's supposed to be called Walton Mart, but he was such a cheap ass. He's a notorious cheap ass. He called it Walmart to save on the sign.
That's smart. And then he, there's another book called In Sam We Trust, I believe, which is his biography. That's his autobiography, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I read both of them. They're wonderful.
Amazing story.
And a lot of people hate on Walmart, and I understand they're hating on it for the same reason as Standard Oil, big business. It represents like, shutting down some mom and pop stores. He was a good guy though.
He was a good guy. And also, it could also be argued from the other side that Walmart has done more for the average middle-class family than pretty much anyone in history.
And his intentions were good. He wasn't a liar. He when I read about him, I was like, oh, this guy, he's an, because I was the same way. I'm like, oh, Walmart, that's dirty. That's grimy. I don't like Walmart. No, he was a good dude. This guy was all right.
He was good. I learned a lot. I also it's kind of like you learn a lot about the history of America. It makes you like kind of proud to be an American. Like read stuff like this. The other thing is I freaking love Steve Jobs. I don't cry that often, but I cried the day that Steve Jobs died. I actually really did. It's not even a joke. I was very sad. I was just like, I think humanity is like going to go slower now. And like, I think there's been people such as Elon Musk who've kind of picked up the void of what Steve Jobs represented. But I just remember thinking like, this was a human that was a devastating loss.
I think that the Steve Jobs biography is amazing. The Elon Musk book is only okay.
Well, it's only halfway through a story.
That's true.
Like imagine this book was only published a few years ago and doesn't have all the other stuff he's done.
I think Steve Jobs' book was hard to put down because Steve Jobs as a character is more likable than Musk. Although I dislike Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, but I loved reading about them. And I'm so happy that they exist. In this book by Walter Isaacson, Walter Isaacson also wrote the biography of Ben Franklin. I'll go get that.
Is that yours?
Yeah. And I think
Ben Franklin right there.
Yes.
Right,
but I think it's not nearly as good as that. I'll be right back.
Interesting. That's Leonardo da Vinci. My bad. Well, Sam is turning off his duck thing. Hey, buddy. So the Steve Jobs book, I truly love this. And I've read every book on Steve Jobs. There's one called Return to the Little Kingdom. That's another one. I've also bought all these quotes of Steve Jobs. He was one of those people that was just so damn logical. He could explain things very simply. I love listening to him talk. And also you just see it through the reflection of his products.
And this book is actually good. This is written by a guy named Michael Morowitz.
Return to the Little Kingdom by Steve Jobs.
Yeah. Michael Morowitz is actually one of the richest men in the world right now. And he helped start a fund called Sequoia. And he started...
That's who wrote that?
Yeah. And he started it because he became friends... He was a journalist and became friends with Steve Jobs and started investing.
Cool. I'm going to go... Do you do fiction books at all, ever?
Yeah. The most recent one I read was by... what's the famous American author? John Steinberg? Was his name John Steinberg? What am I blanking on? It's called Travels Through America with Charlie. Basically, this guy, he wrote Grapes of Wrath.
Oh.
Steinberg, but what's his fucking...
E.B. Du Bois? I don't know.
No, I think it's John Steinbeck. Duh. John Steinbeck. And so basically it's a really good book. It's supposed to be a memoir, but it's also a little bit fiction of him driving his art. Basically, he was born in the early 1900s. He wrote these amazing American classics about middle America. Mm-hmm. He's now rich and in his 60s and living in the Hamptons. And he goes, what the fuck? I'm so out of touch. And so he drives around America with his RV trying to understand the average American in the 1960s.
Interesting. I love hard science fiction. So I don't think you're into this kind of stuff, right?
No.
Yeah, I like stuff where it's just like the physics and engineering are real, but the story is fake. So I don't have it here because I rent out The Martian and another one by Andy Weir, Project Hail Mary. Oh,
everyone's
actually,
talking
your
about
wife
it.
is reading it right now, I think, right?
Everyone's talking about Project.
God, it is so good. So obviously The Martian is a fake story. No one's been to Mars yet. However, the physics and everything behind it are real. So similarly, Project Hail Mary, I won't spoil it for you, but it's kind of a science fiction novel. Very, very engineering and science heavy. So if you don't like that, you won't do it. This was a random book. I don't even know if you could find this on Amazon. It's called Seed. My brother got it for me for Christmas because he knows I like hard fiction. And just this unknown author called Matthew G. Dick, which sounds like a fake name, but Seed. I thought this was a great one. So I love like a sciencey engineering one. Do you read like Harry Potter and stuff?
No.
I can't get into wizards.
Yeah, I'm not into that stuff
Dragons
for some reason.
and crap?
No, I don't do any. The only fiction I'll do is like, I did Fight Club because I like the movie. What else? No, I don't really do Catcher in the Rye. I do like American classics just because it's more like, it's almost at that point that's like historical for me. It's like...
Cool. So let's get to the last one, writing books. Have you read any of these? So obviously, I'd read Copywriting Handbook. So you love that.
I've read all of them. I would say my favorite writing book is On Writing by Stephen King.
I got that here too.
The second half of it.
Why is the second half better?
The first half is about his life. The second half is about writing.
Got it. What about this one, Ogilvy on advertising? freaking classic. I just recorded another video about this, but this is such a good book. And I still think to this day, there's probably no better book about marketing that has ever
So
put out.
I agree that that's wonderful, but his other book called Confessions of an Ad Man,
right there.
I think is even better.
But that's the business side of it, right?
Yes, but if you read his writing and how he talks about stuff, if I want to copy Ogilvy, I'm going to read that book and see how he writes and copy him.
Yeah, we just literally did another book, a video about that book. So, but I think Ogilvy on advertising, if you are in marketing or writing or business, you should just have this book ready. And if you ever want some ideas, just flip through it. The other one is, this is like a businessy, but I consider it a writing book.
Yeah, it's
Jay
amazing.
Abraham. You know Jay Abraham?
Yeah.
Jay Abraham's a boss, and he's written like 20 something books. I think this is the one you need to get though. Getting everything you can out of all you got. True story. I've left this book inside airplanes at least twice. This is probably my third copy because I would bring it in my bag everywhere I go. And whenever I just had some free time, I'd go through it and always get a business idea of some sort.
Yeah, he's
Such
amazing.
a good book.
And he's not
It's
that
not-
popular anymore.
I don't know. I think things pretty popular. Anyways, this is a great. One of my top 3 of all time. And then the Bourdain letters. Gary Halbert wrote these from jail to his son. You read them, right?
Yeah, so he was a copywriter who was amazing, and he was so good that he tricked people into buying stuff, and he never fulfilled the orders, and he got arrested.
Yep. He went to jail for mail fraud. He is a weird character.
Very weird.
I've also heard from people who know him. I don't want to talk bad about the dead or anything. I've talked to a lot of people who knew him, and he had some demons.
Yeah. He was, I think, an alcoholic, and I think he stole a lot, and he was a gambler. I think he was fucked up in a variety of different
Not
ways.
the greatest guy in the world, but
He wrote,
the lessons are amazing.
and he's a good writer.
And the way that he gets you hooked on pages, and especially back in the day, he would like get to the bottom of the page and have like a big secret that would come on the next page. So when you're reading this, listen to what he says, but also watch how he writes. I think that's the main thing.
It's also free online.
It's free online. You can also get the handwritten version. So actually, Bond Halbert, his son, sent me an original copy of like the copies of his writing. And like me, he had horrible handwriting. You can't even read it. So you might want to buy the book or print them out for free online.
That's good.
Cool. So that's a bunch of cool books. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
I think we went through a lot.
Yeah, I think we went through life, business, investing, fun, biographies, fiction, writing.
And this is on YouTube.
This will be on YouTube.
Comment in below who had the better recommendations and which of these are you're actually going to read.
Or any good books you think we might like based on these. I am looking for some cool hard science fiction books to continue reading. I can't find any more. And I also want a really good biography. That'd be awesome. I kind of like older books also, right? Because I feel like the older books, like there's a lot of crappy older books, but then the good ones kind of rise to the top.
Yeah. And I'm interested in
Suffering.
anything about America from 1880 to 1930, and I like American Indian books.
Do I have right here? Biography of Henry Ford. I read that one recently.
I started reading that a little bit. Dude, he hated Jews a lot. He was very anti-Semitic. I started reading about him and I was like, oh my God, he was not a fan of the Jews. Did you know that?
Yes. But okay, here's one of the reasons I love reading those old books. One, when they talk about politics, it sounds exactly like today. People think that like, oh, the country's divided. It's always been that way. It's literally been like that since day one.
Dude, he had this book. I forget what it's called. It could be called like America's Problem or something like that. And it's about Jews.
Oh.
He's like wrote a book like he kind of ruined it a little bit for me. I recently read the biography of the Wright brothers. They're amazing. They were great people. They were perfect. They never
No Jew hating?
What?
No Jew hating?
They did not hate the Jews. They were lovely to everyone. They were very lovely to black people, to white people, to women. They were a lovely group of people. And then so I used to idolize Henry Ford, and then I started learning. I'm like, oh, he did not like certain groups of people.
You know what's interesting, I've noticed, you actually look at the person kind of like as a whole. I kind of look at him for their narrow range of things I expect. Like so Snowball by Warren Buffett, it's actually a lot about his private life and all that kind of stuff. And like you said, I wasn't super interested in like the entire backstory. I just wanted to know more about his
I
investment.
just think I try to pick and choose who I'm going to be inspired by.
But then also, don't you like seeing the pitfalls? Like, for example,
Yeah, I love that.
He's notorious for reading a bunch of like the documents, but he'll do it all day. So his son was giving an interview in this, and he'd be like, yeah, dad would come home, go up to his study and just read the whole day. And like, wouldn't eat dinner with us, wouldn't do anything. Like, you didn't even know he's there. And I was like, okay, I don't want to do that with a future family.
Yeah.
That would
I
be
think
bad.
it's a good way of how not to live.
Yeah. So it's helpful. Cool. Books are awesome. Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it.